afternoon. I'm so glad you guys are here today. I have two amazing authors with me, Del Sandeen and Zen E. Rocklyn. How are you guys doing today?
Great. Fantastic. Excited.
I have an introduction for them, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. But first, please let me do my introduction as I pull up my questions. Okay, here we go. Black horror has always been about more than monsters. It's a mirror. Through blood, bone, and memory, it speaks truth about what it means to survive, to rage, and to reclaim. This afternoon, we're joined by Del Sandeen, author of This Cursed House, and Zen E. Rocklyn, author of Flowers for the Sea, two writers who show us what happens when terror wears a familiar face. Their work reveals how horror becomes a space for Black writers to confront the fears we're often told to silence, and in doing so, to transform them. Please join me in welcoming Del Sandeen and Zen E. Rocklyn. So I want to start by saying this is my first time reading both of yours works, and it was two completely different stories, but they both touched me I had two different reactions to both. Zen, I want to start with you because I had a visceral reaction. I said, oh, I had a visceral reaction. So I want to start by asking you, what made you want to write something so invasive? When I read it, it kind of felt like when we go to like the doctor and they're not kind of like paying attention to us in our bodies. And so what made you want to write Black woman body horror?
Well, it actually really started from, first of all, writing is my therapy, so thank you. So I grew up with a severe case of eczema, and I exercised that kind of trauma through my writing, as well as I have a different kind of reaction to peanuts. I'm allergic to peanuts, which only started when I was like 4. I love peanut butter. I was the kid that pushed the chair up to the cabinet and was like, oh, let me eat it. But then I broke out and my skin literally blisters and then splits open. So I start bleeding profusely. Scared the shit out of my mother. It was like, but so that's something, both those traumas I worked through because, you know, kids don't understand, especially white kids. So they will pick on you, they will say like really mean things. So it was, and then on top of that, as I got older and learning our history and learning the fact that we are the foremothers of gynecology, because our bodies were experimented on and, you know, throughout the centuries, learning about that, learning about Henrietta Lacks and things like that, like it emboldened me to say something about how much pain we carry and how we carry it in silence. Even no matter how loud we get about it, we are still ignored. We're still looked at as these freaks of nature because we supposedly handle pain in a different way. So yeah, I wanted to explore that. I wanted to make a statement on that and also honestly create an angry character about it.
Yeah.
I wanted to create a character that was wearing her scars and making sure people knew. Sorry, I curse a lot. So I wanted to make sure that people knew, like, fuck you, this is me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it, and you know, I think like a lot of us are ignored, and I thought of like a lot of my own experiences, like going to the doctor, and I'm like, hey, I'm feeling real weird. They're like, maybe you're just fat. I'm like, well,
right.
Let's look into what it is. So thank you for writing your story. I really, really enjoyed it. Del,
Yes.
your story takes on something, and I loved it because we're meeting our protagonist is a dark-skinned woman, where her relatives are like the Creole, and they're very much passing.
Yes.
And so it was interesting. I mean, we've heard stories of like how families will pass, but in never thinking about like what children of their future line will feel like as someone who is a darker skin. And this family is very uppity, and like, what was the basis of this story?
Oh my gosh. I was gonna say one of the inspirations started with a movie. Like anybody who knows me knows I love Eve's Bayou.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I liked Eve's Bayou so much is because, you know, a lot of times up until that point when they would make Black movies or, you know, movies where a Black person was a central character, we weren't like fully realized. And, then they make Eve's Bayou, and this family is complex, and they're messy, and it just felt very real. It's like, even if that's not your personal experience, you know somebody who's like got a messy family. So I said, I think part of the reason that I wrote the book, I kind of wanted to do like a love letter to Eve's Bayou. And as far as the conflict between, the family, and Gemma, in my own family, I've had relatives who have dealt with that, been discriminated against because they're darker skinned. And in the one of the advanced readers copies, that came out before the book was published last year, I had a reader's note. So anybody who read that, they already know this story. But my grandmother, my dad's mother, she was brown skinned woman. She grew up in the segregated South, and when she was about in middle school, and she was lived in the country, so it's like this poor school where they don't have enough resources for everybody. So when it was time for the girls to learn to sew using a machine, she really wanted to do that because she always wanted to learn how to sew on a machine. And the teacher was light-skinned, and the teacher favored the light-skinned girls in the class. So the brown-skinned girls at my grandma, they didn't even get to sit down and use the machines.
Wow.
They had to stand there and watch while the light-skinned girls got to learn to sew.
Wow. And you think about that and how detrimental that can be in terms of like, work, moving forward, building a future for yourself. That's okay. That just hit me. I want to ask you both. So the prompt for this particular panel mentions terror wearing a familiar face. For both of you, how do you explore horror rooted in home, body, and lineage? And why do you think familiar spaces make such effective settings for fear?
Your question. And it's only 45 minutes. I think I tend to, it's not evident in Flowers for the Sea, but it's definitely evident in some of my other work. And one of the novels that I'm working on is the mother-daughter relationship. And how my mother is very light-skinned. My dad is like kind of chestnut. He's a little light-skinned. And when I was born, my mother was basically like, whose baby is this? Because I was brown-skinned. She kept me in long sleeves as a baby. She didn't want to hold me. So my connection was more so with my father. So there is this horror within the mother-daughter relationship because you look to your mother, and I look exactly like my mother, just brown skin. So there's this horror within the mother-daughter relationship in which you are seeking that comfort. And skinfolk and kinfolk, it was kinfolk. So it's like you look for that solace, you look for that relationship with your mother, and it doesn't happen. You distrust a lot of what looks like your mother, or just what looks like your, what could be considered your enemy, or someone that antagonizes you. So I definitely, especially growing up in a complex background where my parents are from Trinidad, where it's more so about class than actual race relations. And then growing up as a Black American with Trinidadian pride, and then on top of that, not being Black enough, not being Caribbean enough, not being obviously white enough. So, I gravitated towards Black Americans, but I was rejected to a certain degree because I had a national kind of pride that Black Americans are beat out of, to be honest with you. So it's kind of wearing that familiar face and being rejected by that familiar face is where the horror stems for me. And it hurts like no other. Like you expect it from white people.
Yes.
You expect it from a certain face. But then when it comes to familiarity, that's why I love this space, because it's like we've grown past that. We've definitely come together. But there was a time where we were divisive. We were divided amongst ourselves. So having that familiarity, where that familiarity stops at your skin tone, it's like, that's a trauma within itself.
Yeah.
So I wanted to, a lot of my work deals with that, especially with Eroxy, with Ket basically kind of rejecting her and not understanding why this dark-skinned woman is being chosen by Herat more so than Ket, because she's lighter skinned, is like, why is she being chosen instead of me? I'm the one that gets the attention. I'm the one that's central. So I definitely wanted to explore that.
That was a beautiful answer. Yeah. You do. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. What was the second part?
So the second part. The second part of the question is, why do you think familiar spaces make such effective settings for fear?
Okay, awesome. Okay. I think like one of the first things I wanted to like piggyback off of Zen about is sometimes the people who are supposed to love us hurt us the most, and they don't always do it knowingly. But sometimes, they don't know how to love in a healthy way because they were not loved in a healthy way. And I think a lot of people can identify with that. And historically, Black people have not sought out mental health treatment, either because it wasn't accessible or because we've got trauma surrounding medical treatments. And so it's been hard. So that whole, generational trauma just, goes on and on. And I was gonna say, this reminds me of a book that I read years back, and it's called The Rise and Fall of Jim Crow. And when I read it, a friend of mine was reading it at the same time, so afterward we talked about it, and I said to her, I said, I was most angry about the white people who were doing all these racist things. And she said, I was more mad at the Black people who were doing these horrible things to other Black people, for whether it was like, someone who's living in the house back in slavery times and, just
Right.
Treating the other, enslaved people differently or what have you. So I think, at least, for me, when I write, I'm writing what I know. And, so I know we are complex and our backgrounds are different. And even though human, as far as like human wants and needs are pretty much the same, the way we express that can be different.
Yeah, thank you both. Zen, you brought up something where you said, like wanting to be chosen. Why didn't I'm so bad with character names.
That's okay.
Ket, yes, and also thinking about like your Haitian heritage and like Trinidad. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I've seen like during this administration, and we talk about like people being sent back to we're talking about like immigration, and I've seen like the division happening again. And this is a bit off topic, but I wanted to bring it up because what you said, I've seen the division coming like back again, like the xenophobia, like Black Americans saying, well, I'm an American, but they don't think that the stuff that's happening can happen to them still. And so I just want to say thank you for that. And I think like familiarity, when I'm asking that question, also means like familiarity in what like Black Americans are used to. We, like you said, we've had our pride beaten out of us, but like we still have to fight every day. And I think that's something that we kind of forget when we're having like these xenophobic topics, and we talk about them and we say, well, I was here, I have a passport. Okay, if they could find, and I'm gonna be very frank, if they could find a way to get niggas out of here, they would.
Right. If they're going for them, they're gonna come for us.
Absolutely, yes.
Right.
So thank you for that. I want to ask, my next question is, horror has long been a genre where Black people have been erased or tokenized. How does centering Blackness change not just who survives, but what the story means?
I think when we're able to tell our own stories, we're able to center ourselves in the stories and talk about what Black people think about and deal with on a day-to-day basis. Whereas a white author covering racism is like, I don't think they have any idea what it's like, because some of the racism that we deal with is big and very direct, but a lot of it is very subtle. There's a lot of microaggressions. So when we're able to center ourselves in it, we're able to tackle, and I know sometimes with with white authors, and I was talking to Zen earlier, I've been having this issue with my editor a little bit. Racism does not always have to be the big bad.
Right.
And, we might be scared by something else. Maybe it's, how we've grown up, our surroundings, even something like food scarcity. So we're able to write those topics from our point of view because we know it and we're familiar with it, whereas someone who is not familiar with it, from that Black viewpoint, might handle it a different way, and it might not be as, as sensitive, to the topic and the characters.
So I grew up reading Stephen King, which, good God. Maine is obviously a very white state, so, growing up, he didn't have exposure to any Black people. So he's gonna go off of what other white people think of us. And we are magic, we are resilient, and they don't know how that happens. So therefore they have to make up shit. And in that making up shit is deifying, but in the lowest rung of deifying of Black people. So for me, centralizing a Black character is making sure that yes, we are deified, but we're at the top. We are above this. We are magic because of what we've gone through and what we continually go through. There is a saying that Lyndon B. Johnson said that if you make the poorest white man feel better than the richest Black man, then you have the power. And so there is this, white people have to distance themselves from our humanity as much as possible, because then they really, if they are truly about understanding racism and the insidiousness of it, they have to look within themselves and understand their own privilege. And as we can see with this administration, with the book bans, with the curriculum that's being taught, we are completely dehumanized and looked at as lesser than. Since we stopped working for free, they believe we're not working at all. So centralizing Black characters is like showing a mirror to white people inadvertently, because we want to tell our stories. We want to tell, just like Del said, racism isn't always the big bad, in the sense that it's, in some ways, it's definitely divisive, but it's also, how am I trying to say this? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that racism is insidious, and to me, it is everywhere. But it's not always the big bad in the sense that it's obvious. So with obvious literature, in these overtures that, are about the Ku Klux Klan and about slavery and being beaten, white people get to excuse themselves from the actual responsibility of understanding racism. Because then they say, oh, well, I'm not doing that, so therefore I'm better than my ancestors. And it's like, no, baby, you still benefit from what your ancestors did. And you don't want to face the fact that your grandma is in those pictures throwing bricks at Ruby Bridges.
Yes.
So with us putting ourselves in the center of these stories and showing especially Black joy and our resilience and how we have come up from the ashes and how we are reclaiming our time and reclaiming the fact that we are amazing, is something that white people will never understand. Never understand.
Yes. And I don't need them to understand.
Right.
I don't. That's
right.
I'm here. I don't think it's our job to explain to white people how magical we are. They know that we are this magical, and they know why they Mimo and they Papa do what they do. So don't ask me nothing. You ask them.
Right.
But I want to piggyback off of what you said. Racism not being the big bad. as a light-skinned person, I am still reckoning with this, by the way. I was so hurt by I am so bad with that name.
Oh, the Duchamps.
The Duchamps.
Yes.
I was so hurt by the way they were treating Gemma, our girl. Cause I know she got another one. So I'm not trying to spoil the book for you.
Right.
I was so hurt by how they treated her, and it made me reflect. And I've been reflecting on this before, but about how like maybe some of my own family members have maybe treated me differently than my darker skinned cousins, right? So your book titled "This Cursed House," the title itself suggests that the curse isn't just supernatural, but it's generational. What does the idea of a cursed home represent for you in a Black Southern context?
Oh, let me see. Oh my gosh. I was gonna say, I guess it can mean a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because every family is different, and obviously, in my novel, it's just covering like the light skin privilege, versus the brown skin. But yes, I know it can also go in reverse.
Mm-hmm.
But beyond color, like I said, if someone has been dealing with some trauma that they've not been able to heal from, they just end up passing it on. And to the point where I guess sometimes if we're talking about horror, it doesn't always have to be, if you want to write it, through the lens of horror, it might be through, supernatural means. It might be through, it might be a blood curse or something like that. And I think, especially with our stories, there is a lot to explore and unpack. So beyond colorism, like I said, it might be something generational. It could be something medical. It could be grieving. It just, I don't know. It's kind of like a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
But I think it can be, I don't know, like pretty much anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes we recognize it, but a lot of times we don't, and that's why things just keep going on, and we pass on our unhealed trauma, our unhealed issues. So
I was not spoiler, but the family doesn't really get their act together towards the end. And did you leave it open like that for a reason?
Yeah.
I felt myself like, come on, Grandma, like you gotta tighten up. And she
Yeah.
like at minimum, like come on, like I really, and you know what? Now that I'm talking it out, I think it feels like how some of us may hold like ill will towards our parents, and we forget that they're learning this just as we are.
Right.
And so,
Right.
Thank you for that. That little light bulb. Thank you. I'm sorry, y'all. Give me a second. Y'all good?
You're good.
Okay. All right. Zen, I want to get to you. So Aries. Oh, Jesus.
Roxy?
Thank you.
Okay.
Physical and emotional isolation feels personal and political. How do you balance the deeply internal horror of her story with the broader societal horrors it reflects?
So alienation is a huge theme in my work, just as I explained, as far as the alienation from Black Americans, from Trinidadian, from Afro-Trinidadian, from obviously from white people. Alienation can either break you or strengthen you. And I think there's a Japanese tradition of broken dishes being filled in with gold. So I think even if we break, there's a gold glue that we can put ourselves together with. But Roxy chooses to rock that gold in everyone's freaking face because she understands that, or she feels rather, that the abandonment of her country folk because of her actions, that so it's kind of like a black MAGA,
Right. Okay.
where you want want to associate yourself so badly with wealth and whiteness that you will reject your own background and anybody that looks like you and is going through your own struggle. Anything that reflects you, you want to reject, because then you want to think that you're better than them. And you think that this kind of stature and this status, rather, is going to bleed into you by osmosis. And it don't. So Eroxy is aware of that, but the rest of her country folk aren't. So she's a constant reminder of, this is where you are. If you want to be better, you have to start where you know you are, not in the sense of abstract that is too far from what you actually are. So I think with alienation and isolation, it can, especially with kind of pivoting with workplaces. I was fired from 2 jobs because of white women tears. And it was late. And like when I first went into this family-owned company, I was the only black woman there. And I was the only black woman there. And then they hired another black woman, and she's smaller, she's more slight, she's got finer features, she's lighter skinned. So they gravitated towards her a little bit more. She was going on the business trips, she was representing the company to make it look like, well, we've done our job. So I had this particular white woman who, of course, is naturally shoed in, who started believing that I was talking about her. Oh, brother. She believed that I was talking about her, so she called me and said, if you have something to say it to my face. And I said, I certainly will, but I don't have anything to say to you. Right. She started screaming into the phone, and I said, don't talk to me like that. I'm not your fucking son. And I hung up on her. Half an hour later, I was called into the office, and she's sitting there with a tissue. Oh my God, I just don't understand. And the whole rigmarole. And to know that I was getting no backing, obviously from the CEO and the VP, I knew I wasn't gonna get backing. But from the black woman who I was trying to talk to, she was like, well, you shouldn't have yelled at her.
Not the letter of violence.
Right. So I felt even more alienated from the rest, from the company, and from this other woman, from this other black woman. So when you're coming up in the corporate ladder and you have black women that are like, oh, so you're not gonna do your hair because it's in an afro. My mother actually told me when I stopped getting relaxers, she was like, why are you doing that? It makes you uglier. So that's obviously still a painful memory, but sorry, but understanding that alienation and where they're coming from, their proximity to wealth and whiteness and betterment, is what pushes everyone else away. So while I feel my alienation from the macroaggressions, they are internally aggravating themselves or antagonizing themselves. And that's something that I didn't learn until much later on. So we all feel a sense of alienation from our people, from white people, and that's why spaces like this, where we unite and we, celebrate our hair, no matter if it's straight, whether it's weave, whether it's afros, whether it's locks, doesn't matter, because we're coming together under a common thought, and we end up conversing and getting there. So.
Yeah. That was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah,
give her a round of applause. Yeah, I still want to meet. Oh, girl.
Where's she at?
They put coming from my
Where
mouth.
she at?
Told myself, I just want to talk for a
I
second.
want to ask one more question before I open up the audience for audience questions. But piggybacking off of what you said about alienation, both of your protagonist characters are dealing with that in their own ways of like alienating, whether they have to alienate themselves or their family is alienating them. And so I want to talk about liberation. What does liberation look like in horror, if it looks like anything at all?
I think for me, I think freeing ourselves from the fears that we have, especially the type of fears that have held us back. Because with Gemma, she starts off scared of this ability that she has, and over the course of the novel, she has to confront that until she gets to a point where instead of seeing that ability as a curse, she finally accepts it as a gift.
What does liberation look like?
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
So, and in terms of, I would always like to write characters who, I don't know, can, even when you're dealing like a villain, because obviously, the bad people, they were not good people, but in terms of like a protagonist, someone who is resilient and just can show, I'm strong, and I survived, no matter, what I went through. And I think, that is part of being free. And just, fully like accepting yourself, the good and the bad parts. Because a lot of like whatever, you've gone through, if you survive it, it's ultimately made you stronger.
Right.
So I think there's a freedom in that, accepting yourself, all your flaws. And as long as you're trying to do better, day by day, then you're on the right path.
Absolutely. Thank you for that.
I strongly believe that liberation comes through conversation, but also kind of not giving a fuck of other people's opinions, of their viewpoints, in the sense of their aggression towards us. My second novella that I just finished is about a Black woman who can pull people's secrets from them. She doesn't know where the power originates. She doesn't necessarily know how to activate it. It's just that people start throwing up around her and just like start talking. And then the stranger comes into the diner that she's worked in, and the stranger knows a little too much about her, and she's wondering what's going on. So I think, and she's not a likable character, which is something that I wanted to show, is that yes, Black women are amazing and we're magic but we're still human. We're still human, and we still deserve the respect of humanity. So I actually teach a class called What a Bitch, writing Black villains, Black women villains. Yeah. If you like to sign up, it's midnight at Indigo. So
Yes.
But I take those tropes that are about us, the 4 tropes, which is the Mammy, the Sapphire, the Jezebel, and the Matriarch. I take those tropes with things like the Sapphire, who's a sassy Black woman. Why is she sassy? And what happens when she shuts that door at night? It's about understanding where these tropes come from and circumventing them in the sense of humanizing them. So I think bringing a humanity to, like, a villain has a purpose, whether it's to reflect society or reflect selfish intentions. It's still, the villains still deserve to be not necessarily explained, but related to, in some kind of small fashion. Where, like, I'm trying to think of like one of the Joker, like one of his storylines is the fact that his wife was killed. So you feel that grief and how he is exploring that grief. his wife's murder wasn't solved. So there's that exploration of the law and who the law works for, and the fact that in that particular storyline, I think the Joker's black, but never mind that. But I think through showing villains that have, or those unlikable black characters that have that three-dimensional background, it definitely moves us towards humanity for the rest of the audience to see.
Yeah. Y'all. Do we have any questions? Oh, okay. Rochelle, I saw you first. Go ahead.
So I am primarily a thriller and horror reader. At times I have experienced black fatigue, if you will, when reading horror. What I've noticed here lately in the last 2 years is that we are now starting to get more evolved characters who are much smarter. Typically when you even are viewing a horror, the black character is the hero at first and just does something crazy. How important is it to you to write diversely connected characters that really speak to your black readers? And while we experience the trauma of the horror, really also kind of keep us safe from the heaviness that is just the horror of being sometimes black in America.
Excellent question. I wish I wrote that.
Okay, I'll go first. I was gonna say it's extremely important to me because not only do I want to write that and I want to read that, I want to see that on film. Because, like you said, before a certain era, black person always died first, in the movies. And again, though, that's why I don't. There's a lot of black horror out there where we don't have to have racism be, the issue, because in some ways that almost centers white people too much.
Yes.
They've
Yes.
always been centered. So it's like, why can't we have a horror, I don't know, about a haunted house where you're just a haunted house. The house is bad for some reason, or a haunted house where you got some evil little kid, or a haunted horror story where you got some evil little kid who's just bad just because they're bad. So yeah, and I think the more, the black authors are able to take up this space, the more diverse stories we're going to see, where, like Zen may have some ideas, about fear that don't even occur to me, and vice versa. So it's, the more horror authors, the better, as far as I'm concerned, for that reason.
I want to reflect how we would react. And I think there's a base instinct in us because we had to have that instinct in order to survive. My partner is Native and white. His kids are white because they're 3/4. And they do things that I'm just like, such a little badass thing. But I reined them in and I taught them basic manners, basic things. But one of the things that we talked about is he's like, what if we had a kid? And I'm like, you do realize that I have to raise that child completely different to how you are raising your children. So I believe there's a base instinct, but it doesn't always have to center whiteness, like you said, because it also reflects the Black society that we live in as well. My father's mother, my grandmother, married a passing man. So his family is extremely light skinned, had a problem with her because she was a little bit toasty. And I think there is a fear within that because while they wanted to wrangle their grandkids and their cousins and things like that, it came from a place of fear. So I think there is a relatability in fear. And like you said, there is a fatigue, and I think the fatigue is what is coming from centering whiteness. So when we talk about our other fears and how it kind of relates to liberation, and that fear that we'll never be free, I think that's something that is hardcore within us. So I think exploring our basic reactions to certain things, if we hear a noise, we don't inspect it.
Right.
The first person to die is the black one. Oh, Night of the Living Dead, the original Night of the Living Dead. I'm forgetting the name of the director.
Was it George Romero?
George Romero, yes. He said he didn't cast the lead black man as a black man, but obviously political overtones with the ending. This is a 50-year-old film, so spoiler. But the fact that he smacks the shit out of a white woman, lives until the end, and then good old boys end up shooting him thinking that he's a zombie, is saying so much about the fact that this black man was like, no, I'm not putting myself on the line for you, white woman. I am trying to survive. So something like that, where he didn't center her whiteness, he didn't center her fragility, he centered on his survival, is something that I think can be used within horror a lot more, and it will open up a lot more avenues.
Perfect.
You, yeah, and then.
So my question is for you, related to the course, because I'm signing up for that. First question is it only in October? Because I see it's only 2 days.
Yeah, it's 2 dates. I split it into 2 classes, and I taught it in the spring, and then I'm teaching in the fall. If there's good enrollment again and I get good feedback again, then they want to keep me on. So
Sorry, I'm gonna do it now.
okay.
But the reason I asked the question is, or the reason I'm interested in taking the course, because I'm writing my first thriller, and I am writing a black female villain, and in telling my trusted friends about the plot and the villain, and to be honest, she is doing some white people shit in the book. My friend said to me, well, is that realistic though? Because that's some white people shit. And I was like, I mean, maybe, but why can't it be black
People
shit
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and so I guess my question is, how do you get past believing that other people will look at it as some white people shit when you put it out, and there is a black female in the book?
I think that's always, unfortunately, when you write a book and you let it out to the public, they're gonna view whatever they want to view from their perspective. And I think that gives me more fuel to put out different characters that we're not expecting. Like, a guy that I dated, a black man that I dated, told me that I'm weak because I suffer from depression.
Get ready.
I've been through some shit. So I made it a point to make my black women characters depressed, and not necessarily angry about it, but literally not leaving the bed. I had a character who literally snuggled in her dirty ass sheets because she couldn't get out of bed. So there's this idea of us surviving to the point where we look like a deity, but there are surviving to some people, to some black women, is just not cutting our wrists. So I think ignore your friend's stuff. Because her. Well, there you go. Because the more you read, the more your perspective broadens. So the less you read, the more you're entertained by shit.
Exactly.
So, you know, so when you have one of the things that Roxy does in Flowers for the Sea is she has sex while she's pregnant. She's in active labor, and I've had women tell me, like, I've been pregnant twice, but I haven't given birth. I've had pregnant women tell me that, yeah, that's one of the things that doctors recommend. I had white women tell me this is not my experience, and give me no stars on Goodreads.
And they do, because
It happens. You have black women that will say the same thing. You gotta ignore it. Just put it out there. there's obviously, just like I was saying, like a baseline of our reactions, but we definitely deviate from how we respond to those reactions. So yeah, go for it. Do what you do.
Okay. Bree, I know it's 2:45 on the dot.
It's quick.
Okay, let's go for it. Let's go for it.
Rocket speed. Thank you both for being here and being so vulnerable with all of us. And I think we all needed to hear all these words. Ted Redo once famously said, "Black horror is Black history." And I want to know how proudly you feel walking in that legacy.
Okay.
That legacy has given me more strength and has straightened my back more than I can actually express. Because living amongst a lot of white kids and white culture, which is not really culture, being the dominant exposure, like I was crawled into myself. I did not feel that pride until I was in Black spaces. And I noticed that other people love horror, love our history, have pride in our history. So that has straightened my back and given me, like reading Dark Matter, reading Raven Massey, like finding these other authors who have paved the way for me has been, I can't even express, actually.
I was gonna say super proud. I remember Toni Morrison, you know, she specifically said she wrote for Black readers. And I believe in that interview, you know, it was a white man interviewing her,
Yes.
and he was, I guess he was expecting her to be like, I write for everybody, and Toni Morrison said, I write for Black readers. And that's what I'm trying to do, you know, as well, because, and just being here this weekend, especially in this current climate, just like being loved on, like by your own people, it has been it's been an amazing experience. And just knowing that y'all appreciate the work that we do, and y'all hype us up and support us, it means so much, you know, just coming from your own. So yeah, I'm very proud. You know, just, you know, it's like, I'm not Toni, you know, I'm not Alice, you know, but just to be in the same, you know, industry, it makes me, you know, proud and extremely humbled and honored as well.
Give them a round of applause. Thank you for coming. Honor to moderate you both. Your stories were fantastic. You guys are signing from 4 to 6, right?
Yes.
That's what they be. Their books is in the bookstore. Go get the books.
Yeah.
Period. Thank you guys.
Thank you so much.